You are my fire, the one desire. Believe when I say that I want it that way. Welcome to Preparing for AI, or PAI, with me, Crayfish Bob.
And I'm Jimmy Rhodes. Are we still...
That's just your normal name.
Well, yeah, I'm Jimmy Rhodes. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we still, now that we're on video, are we still doing the gag thing? Is it
well, I mean, it's not any different because we're on video.
It is.
Is it?
Well, yeah, because people can, like my friends.
People didn't think
it's
that.
only my friends that listen anyway.
But people didn't think you were other people anyway. They knew that it was you.
Well, no,
they didn't because they couldn't see you. In a world of AI, their critical thinking was so low that they thought you were Bobby Charlton, and they thought you changed every week.
Well, I don't know.
Anyway,
I thought it was a
okay. Well, I'm Matt Cartwright.
Based guy.
I'm Matt Cartwright.
And
anyway,
now we're doing video, aren't we?
We are. And welcome to Preparing for AI, or PAI, as we've decided to now call it. And please don't comment about the missing F, because PFAI doesn't sound right.
And the missing hair on my head.
Yeah. Well, anyway, welcome to Preparing for AI, and a special episode to talk about ClawBot, which on our last episode we did talk about, but we talked about it as being called MaltBot, which it was called at the time. Before that it was called ClawBot, but it is now established as OpenClaw. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we are.
So go on, talk about it.
Yeah, so I can't remember what we said last time, but there's been a lot of news about Claw. Is
OpenClaw.
OpenClaw. You've confused me now.
It's had so many names. It's OpenClaw, and it's not going to change. It's established now as OpenClaw, so that is its name. It's
established as OpenClaw. So yeah, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, which it depends if you follow AI news or not. It's created a massive storm. What's his name? Peter.
I was Openshaw, but that's someone completely different.
Peter Openshaw. Peter Steinberger. It was the creation of Peter Steinberger, who's actually he's been recruited by OpenAI since the creation of OpenClaw. It was such a big deal. I think it's had like 100 and something thousand likes on GitHub.
200 something thousand.
200 something thousand. So they call them stars on GitHub. But to put that in context, it's more than Linux, which much to the dismay of a lot of the GitHub community, like this thing that's been around for about a month has more likes or equivalents of likes than Linux, the operating system, which is quite depressing in a way and a bit of a sign of the times. But yeah, so effectively it's caused this massive furore because it's a very agentic like thing. I mean, I would still say like it requires a bit of setup, and it's not for the faint-of-hearted technically wise. However, like if you can get one set up, and we're going to talk about our experiences with it in a bit. It has these, basically you can plug it into email, you can plug it into 11 Labs and give it a voice. You can chat to it on Discord, on WhatsApp, on WeChat. It's pretty cool. Like you can chat to it on with all these different chat interfaces that previously you had to speak to an AI. You basically went onto ChatGPT or OpenAI or Anthropic's interface with Claude, and you just had a chat. This feels much more like you're having a conversation with a friend in a way, I suppose, because you give it a personality. So you have this like soul file and a bunch of files that you configure. So you basically get a lot of control over the way it behaves and its personality. But not only that, you can do amazing things with it. So it can search the web, it can answer your emails, you can plug it into your own email if you're crazy enough, and get it to go through your inbox. And
lots of people have been crazy enough, as we'll talk about later in the episode, right?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty crazy. But yeah, you can effectively, it's got APIs, it's got interfaces to almost anything online that you can imagine, and it can interact with these apps via the APIs. So it can arrange things on your calendar. If you set it up to, it can probably order food to your house via like Just Eat or something like that. It could order you a taxi if it's got the right interface to plug into these things, and a lot of them it does have these interfaces. It can do any of that stuff, and it can just do it through a natural language interface.
Could you just just bring us back a bit, because we've talked about agentic AI quite a lot, and we've talked about what agents will be. And I think, people who have listened to this podcast, so the podcast has been around for a while. This is the first time that we've properly done video when we haven't done interviews anyway. But a lot of people who listen to podcasts, they're not AI experts. They're not people who necessarily are, reading and listening to AI news every day. And so we talked about agentic AI, but maybe people have heard, but actually they haven't needed to listen. So now that we're talking about having something here that is a tool that people can actually use, or even if they're not going to use it, it's kind of being used and they'll hear and see about it. Could you just go back and explain, like, in this context, what an agent is, just for someone who thinks, well, hang on, what's the difference between that and the interface? So I think we should explain that when you access ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, unless you're using an API key, so assuming that you're using the app or you're using the website, you are using their app to just basically access usually the chatbot function of a large language model. The model is in the background, but you're accessing it through there, and it dictates what you can and can't do with it, and you can talk to it, etc. How does OpenClaw differ from that, and how does an agent, in this sense, like, what is it actually?
So it's connected to a large language model in the background. So the core part of it, I mean, it wouldn't work without it, is it's connected to a large language model. Now, you, without going into loads of technical details, effectively you get a API key which you pay for. So you put $10 on it, and then that will last a certain amount of time. It's priced in millions of tokens for input tokens and output tokens. The best models, the most expensive models, but there are a huge range of models to choose from. And so what you do is you with your OpenClaw, you give it an API key which basically allows it to access these large language models. Then you connect it to a messaging app. So let's just use WhatsApp as an example, but it can connect to, I think it can connect to the iPhone messaging app. It can connect to Discord. It can connect to like pretty much most of them now.
Yeah,
Slack.
WhatsApp this week was added, wasn't it, in China?
WeChat.
Sorry. Yeah. WhatsApp, was one of the first. WhatsApp and Discord.
Telegram is one of them. Yeah. So there's differing levels of difficulty to connect it to all of them, but you can connect it to them, and then effectively you have, like, let's say you've got it on WhatsApp. You've just got it in there as a, whatever you call it. Let's call it OpenClaw. Your OpenClaw is on WhatsApp, and you can talk to it. So in that sense, if you just did that basic setup, you'd then be able to, if it was connected to GPT, for example, or Claude, you'd be able to chat with it and ask it questions in the same way as you ask Claude, but you're doing it in your WhatsApp. And it could come back to you and it could answer in the same way as you could ask questions through the Claude interface. And beyond that, like, you can give it a bit of personality through these files and through these markdown files that you set up. Give it a soul, it is, because it's got a soul file, it calls it. And if you just stop there, you would have a Claude. You'd be able to chat with Claude with a bit of a personality, like having a custom prompt in WhatsApp, right? But instead of stopping there, the agentic part of it is that you can then connect it to your calendar. You can connect it to your email or an email inbox. It's probably better to connect it to its own dedicated one. We'll talk about that a bit more in a bit. You can, as I said, you could connect it to something like Uber potentially if there's an interface for it. And that's where it becomes agentic, because then you could say, if you chose to do this, I'm not sure it'd be the best use case, but you could ask it to get you pizza from Pizza Hut and tell it where you live. And then it could, through a natural language interface, it could go away. And because it's got the API that can connect it to Just Eat or something like that, and you've given it either a connection to your credit card, which you can do, or
and your personal details to know where you live and all that. Yeah,
all that stuff.
This is not our recommendation, by the way.
No, it's definitely not a recommendation. But there are ways of setting this stuff up. I'm using this as an example because I think it highlights the agentic nature of it. Yeah. You could get it to book train tickets. You could get it to order you pizza. You could get it to do all these things, and you could do this by typing into WhatsApp or by
speaking
or by talking to it. You could have it on, you could give it a call and it can have a voice through 11 Labs and things like that. So basically it can connect to all these tools and other other apps, I suppose, in the same way that you would talk to them, but it's got like an API interface, and it can take action online in the real world. It can do shopping for you. It can do all this sort of stuff. Now, I don't think OpenClaw is going to be the last of these kinds of things that we see. OpenClaw requires a fair amount of technical setup. It's not cheap to set up either, really, if you want to do it properly. There's a lot of bits of, I need to pay for credits for this and that and the other. But I think that it's a bit of a sign of what we're going to see in terms of genuine, like, agentic AI in the future. And to that point, just to finish, like I said, Peter Steinberg has joined OpenAI. I don't know how much he's getting paid, probably quite a lot, because it's usually in millions of dollars, these kind of hires. But presumably he's gone to OpenAI to develop and build out this kind of capability for OpenAI. So you're going to get...
Well, they've established the OpenClaw Foundation, which
Right.
I'm not sure how that works. I mean, calling it a foundation at the time that OpenAI are, I mean, they're certainly not open anymore, but are also looking at ads, etc. It's kind of a bit bizarre, but I guess at the moment it does seem like they're trying to pitch it that it's not part of OpenAI,
Right.
so it's its own. It has its independence, but how much that in reality that is when he's being paid millions and millions.
Shall we just make up our own story about what OpenAI are going to do? Because they never do what they say anyway. I mean, they literally said they're never going to run ads unless they absolutely have to. To be fair, like maybe now they do absolutely have to.
I mean, I would imagine when they recruited Peter Steinberger, that presumably all of the big players all went in and he decided to choose OpenAI for whatever reason. So I'm sure they've given him a lot of autonomy.
Cash. Oh, sorry, not
Well,
cash.
I think also a lot of autonomy. I mean, like, I think the guy, you've got to say, like, the guy was a sort of coder. You can look at his history. He was doing a lot of stuff, and then he kind of took a 2-year sabbatical and stepped away, and then he just set this thing up, built it, put it on GitHub, and they sort of walked away, and then 2 months later it was massive. So he is not someone who has just done everything for money. So I would imagine that although he's obviously going to get as much money as possible and he's going to be a very rich person now, I think he probably would want some degree of autonomy to be able to do the stuff that he wants. But I'm OpenAI, I mean, even the fact it's called OpenClaw, just before it joined OpenAI, they changed the name. For me, changing it to OpenClaw and then joining OpenAI, is that a coincidence? No one seems to have mentioned this, but it doesn't feel like it is one. But anyway, we've sort of digressed a little bit.
It's because it's open, like OpenAI.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it is open at the moment, but how much longer?
They've obviously bought it for the tech because, and it's probably because I would imagine it's under the MIT license. I don't actually know. My guess is it's under the MIT license, which if anyone is unfamiliar with open source, you can release open source stuff with like no license whatsoever, or you can release it with the MIT license. The MIT license does restrict people from just taking it and commercializing it effectively is what it does. So it says you can go and use it, you can do what you want with it, but if you go off and make a product and make loads of cash, then it still does have a certain level of protection. And so I would imagine it's under that kind of license, and clearly OpenAI have bought it because they could build this themselves, but then do they copy this OpenClaw? It's easier to just buy it, isn't it? It's easier to just... They're probably partly buying the code and the open source rights and the rights to all this OpenClaw as much as they are Steinberger. Sorry, no offense, Peter.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not Sam Altman. We don't hate you yet.
No.
Before we move on to kind of looking at some of the stuff we started talking about, I think we'd plan to talk about it a bit later. But I think like maybe the next question, the most important thing for people to understand is like, why is this so significant? Because I think this is, and they've both happened in sort of January, but I think this is this year's DeepSeek moment. So DeepSeek last year was probably the big thing in AI, not because it was necessarily the biggest development. I think that was overplayed at the time. It was the first thing we did an emergency episode for, and it was because it had just changed the dynamic so much, because you suddenly had this model that was so much cheaper, and some of the hyperbole behind why that has turned out not quite true. But I think what happened with DeepSeek is it shook the foundations because it was something that was completely different. They were able to do things cheaper, and that was probably the biggest story in AI last year. This feels like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe something even bigger will happen later in the year, but it feels like this is an equally significant moment because it's the first time that you've seen an agentic tool in this way, and it is democratized. Like, we'll talk about how you used it, and I think you're right that for this to become a mass tool, it's going to take one of the big labs or a big developer to create something that is much more closed off and that is instantly accessible. But this is the first, and if you are a early adopter, which you are, and you have been with this, this is it's the first time that anyone has developed anything like this, right? Or that's been released to the public anyway.
Yeah, and I talked about. I mean, I've been following some like other AI influencers and stuff like that, and the stuff I talked about was very much, you could order pizza with it and stuff like that. Like they were consumer examples, I suppose. But actually, what people who've been using this in a business sense, who've already been using it. Examples that I've seen are things like lead generation. So having OpenClaw just running overnight, looking for, like, let's say, for example, you're in recruitment, right? You can now basically say, I've got all these positions, I've got all these people, go and like research them and see who matches what, and go and research these positions on LinkedIn, go and find leads. And leads doesn't have to just be for recruitment, but it's a good example. I listened to somebody on a podcast talking about how they've already started using OpenClaw, and in their estimates, they were getting like research done that would have cost them tens of thousands of pounds to get, tens of thousands of dollars, I think they said, and a month to get someone to do this level of research. And it was being done overnight for like $20 using something like OpenClaw. So there are already examples of people like who know tech, setting this stuff up and actually, I mean, I don't know whether they were exaggerating, but even if they were out by a factor of 10, they're leveraging OpenClaw to save a lot of money and time and human effort in basically getting it to do a job.
This is probably its best use case, isn't it? I mean, agentic AI really, because the example that you give of ordering a pizza, and I know I'm being kind of a bit what's the word? Yeah, in saying the example is always, it can book your flights for you, it can order something for you. And the thing is like, well, I book flights 4 times a year and it's not actually that difficult for me. But I think all of the benefits for people personally, they don't have the same impact as in the business space. Not only, not least because it's money, but also just because the kind of things that you want to do that require this kind of scale. Most people in their personal life, they don't need to go away and do research all the way overnight. And actually, if they do, like a deep research on any large language model is sufficient. But what this would enable you to do as a business, as you said, is just to be able to run stuff, constantly, to be able to monitor emails and address leads, to be able to do research, to be able to basically target, like go out and just send emails and do all of that work, and then take away all of that kind of lead generation, admin, and then just get it to a point it hands at you when you've got a deal, and then the person goes in and does that.
It's potential for real job replacement. Exactly. I think real job replacement.
Agentic was when job replacement will really, really pick up.
Yeah, and I think it has been applied like that already. Like we're going to cover some, I guess, bad examples later. But like I've heard loads of really positive, good examples of people using it. Wes Roth, I think, who I follow a little bit on YouTube, he was talking about how he's created his own health app using it, and how he's basically created a completely custom health app. He can take a picture of what he's about to eat and ask how many calories are in it and all this sort of stuff. Things that, like, there are apps out there to do this, but what he's done is stitched together something that gives him exactly what he wants. It gives him the dashboard that shows him exactly what he wants. He talked about getting it to, he said that if he doesn't do cardio for 2 or 3 days in a row, he told it could start being more firm with him and like start actually really pushing him. Like, I
love this use case, by the way. I think this is a great personal example. This is a really good personal example.
This is a good personal example. So like something where you can basically take the features of like something like Garmin and Fitbit and I don't know, your Fitness Pal and your health and whatever it is, like all these different apps, and take the bits that you like from each of them without ads, and go and sort of create some sort of personalized amalgamation. If you take supplements, you can include that. So that's
aimed at me.
Yeah, potentially. But like that's one of the use cases that I think if you're using it on a personal level is something that you just couldn't do before. As I say, like it still requires the technical know-how and the setup right now, but you're going to start to see stuff like this. Like I guarantee within this year, I bet that you are going to see all of the major providers bringing out apps and things like this that basically give you this kind of agentic capability that really pull it all together. So you'll start to have, I don't know, like custom apps effectively that do exactly what you want them to do. Something that's set up to, I don't know, if you want it to give you birthday reminders and tell you when to take your tablets, it'll do that. If you want it to tell you when to go and run and motivate you 2 or 3 times a day, or go out and do exercise and then tell you what to eat or give you recommendations, it'll do that. But like, you can pick and choose whichever bits you want. It's not like here's an app.
I'm just thinking this is that example is a good way just to explain again to people like what this is if you think about it in the examples Jimmy's just given about, you know, you want it to tell you your medicine or whatever or what to eat, is it essentially is the interface between you and the large language model. So that's what it's doing. So it's going away. Because you might think, well, why don't I just talk to the large language model? Well, you can do, but then what this is able to do is as you sort of train it over time and it trains itself, is it understands where to go and look for things. So rather than just every time you have a chat, it goes and looks on the web, but it might not be the right place. It goes and looks at a paper, or it goes and looks at a website. Is over time it knows that, you know, what have I eaten today? Well, it knows to go and have a look in a particular file, and then it knows to maybe go back into your emails and see, you know, where are the receipts for the things that you bought for today. So it's able to say, well, actually, you didn't tell me, but this morning there's a receipt for, you know, a latte. So you also had a latte. And so you're able to set it up to be able to go away and do that stuff. Because I still think it's not necessarily clear. It's like, well, what's the difference between this? Like, what's the advantage of this and me just opening my app?
No, I think it is that, like, it's like you say, imagine something that's hooked into, I mean, it sounds scary when you say it like that, but like hooked into every aspect of your life, but like in a way that you want it to be, and it's customizable, and you can get out of it what you want out of it. I mean, as you say, you can do the same thing with ChatGPT, but you need to sit there and tell it what you need to tell it and give it screenshots of stuff. This is like stitching all that together to give you a better user experience, really, around around that.
This is really interesting. I just found this talked about on the 14th of February when Valentine's Day. So Steinberger and Sam Altman came together on the 14th of February.
I'm not sure they came together, but
well, their organisations came together. The move signalled the formal transition of the project into the OpenClaw Foundation, with OpenAI providing financial and technical backing. The move is seen as an attempt to professionalize the project's security model and stabilize its reputation after months of vibe coding development led to frequent vulnerabilities. I think that's interesting because it seems like that reads to me that that's OpenAI's pitch of why they've done this, is like they're going to give it they're going to give it a reputation, stabilize it, and protect it from you know these kind of developmental vulnerabilities. Yeah, which is kind of, that is part of being open source, right? That's the thing, is in open source, those things will develop and then they'll be fixed. You know, it feels to me like there's a message there about, you know, if we keep it and then we can make sure these bad things don't happen, which has kind of been the argument from the beginning of the large labs of why open source is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it. It just read like that to me.
Yeah.
Should we talk about how we, or particularly you, have been using it? And maybe you can take this time
Producer Bob.
Introduce the podcast's latest member, producer Bob Fletcher.
Yeah, we don't have him here with us, unfortunately.
He's in Manchester.
He's in Manchester. He's in the
having a pint of Boddingtons.
He's in the virtual Manchester. Yeah. Maybe we'll put some. Can we put pictures in the show notes?
Yeah. Well, no one reads the show notes, but we can put.
We'll put a picture. There you go. That's a good reason to look at the show notes.
In the show notes.
We'll put a picture of Bob in there. So, yeah, like we having a bit of fun. We I suppose created Bob Fletch, who's going to be hopefully he's going to be our producer. So he's an OpenClaw instance, and we can talk to him on Discord. He's got his own inbox, which we haven't hooked up to the. We haven't actually hooked it up yet. But the idea is he's going to screen guests for us, and he's going to. I say he. I'm anthropomorphizing him massively.
One episode after our episode where we talked about the danger of anthropomorphizing AI, and then we've done literally the most anthropomorphizing thing you could possibly do.
Yeah, we've created a whole persona around our producer Bob from Manchester. We've got pictures of him in his den, I think is the
and in a Manchester pub drinking a pint of
beer,
ale.
Yeah, ale. So
not to stereotype for any listeners from Manchester,
but yes, if we can give him a voice, because I've been having a look at that, we might introduce Bob in an episode soon. So look out for that.
So what does he do?
So
I mean, I know what he does, but can you tell people what he does?
At the moment, he knows. So I mean, okay, I'll describe it fully, I suppose. So I took every single episode of our podcast for the last year. I got all of the transcriptions. I fed them into Google Gemini, which has a massive context window. You thought I was going to say something.
Well, I just saw what you were doing with your hands. It wasn't.
And we're on video.
The context window, exactly. We can't do this.
Well, no, we can do jokes about it.
Okay.
But if you're only listening on the audio, then you won't understand.
You need to get on YouTube.
Yeah. We can do jokes like that now about being on video. What was I going to say? So yeah, I fed all of our previous shows into Gemini, which I actually had already done for the antagonistic AI episode, and that allowed. And then I asked Gemini to basically produce an overview of the podcast and our personas. So Matt the pessimist and me the techno optimist. To basically start creating a soul file. And this is the cool thing with AI now. Like nowadays you can be like, you can say to Gemini, I'm creating an OpenClaw. It can go and search the web and understand what OpenClaw is. You can explain to it, I want to create these files to start creating the personality for it. You can feed all of the podcasts, because it's about 500,000 tokens, I think, the last year's worth of podcasts. You can feed all that into Gemini and it can distill that into, this is the personality of the podcast presenters. And then basically worked with the AI, I won't go into too much more detail, but worked with the AI to generate this personality that is Bob and help him understand what the show's all about. And then effectively lay out what we want Bob to do, which is help us research episodes, review guests, so review potential guests for the podcast and whether they're a good fit, and then help us to potentially in the future, I mean, we haven't turned this on yet, actually craft emails that are going to go back and forth, help us schedule and all that sort of stuff, because we're, just a little two-man team. Otherwise,
other responsibilities.
We have jobs and responsibilities and stuff. So, we'll keep you updated on Bob as we go, but who knows? He might be scheduling a guest for us sometime soon.
I mean, what's interesting, I think, for people to understand is like with the Discord group. So the 3 people in the Discord chat, which is me, Jimmy, and Bob, and then if
Bob's a person, is he? You said 3 people.
Yeah. Well, in this context, he is, right?
Yeah.
He's got a picture, he's got a face, so he must be real. And then within the group, so if you'd have to at Bob when you talk for it to read this. So what's quite interesting is you can have a conversation without atting Bob, and he will not get involved in the conversation. Once you at him, he can reply. So you can be talking about the podcast, what we're going to do, and just say, okay, let's ask Bob, can you go away and research OpenClaw developments this week? And he'll say, okay. And then what he or it will do, because of the way that Jimmy has set it up, is depending on what the task is it will delegate it to kind of sub-agents. So it will run on different models. So basically, let's give an example. So, we're not using the most expensive model, but let's say at the top we're using Sonnet 3.7, right? Which is not that expensive, but is not a dirt cheap model. So it will use that to basically go and decide what to do. But then if it's just a case of going and doing a basic internet search, it will then delegate that piece of work to a cheaper large language model.
Yeah.
And then you have an even cheaper one that does a kind of, is it every day every hour?
Every 30 minutes. I think.
Every 30 minutes.
Every 30 minutes, it does something called a heartbeat. So
Yeah.
this is all core stuff that's built into OpenClaw. By default, it's got like your sort of CEO exec who makes all the decisions.
It's a good way of looking at it, like a company, right?
Yeah, and then your sub agents, which are sort of like members of the team, which you give instructions to, and then there's like a proper admin function, which is something that just runs every 30 minutes to. It can do all sorts of different things, but it's whatever you ask it to do. But it can go and search the web for certain information. It can go and check the weather. I think in the case of can't remember what Bob does on his heartbeat.
Checks the inbox.
That's it. Checks the inbox.
Yeah.
Yes, nice one. Exactly. So where you've got things like that, where you've got it connected to an inbox, the heartbeat is like, just go and check the inbox, see if there's any emails in there. If there's something that needs doing with one of those emails, it'll then raise that up to a more capable model. Yeah.
And then what we want to have is at some point that if there's junk in there, it will just get rid of that. If there's an email that is, sort of completely speculative, a guess that we wouldn't want to have on is it can just have a standard response, and we'll go back and say, hey, sorry, this is not the kind of thing we're looking for. Good luck with everything else. And then if it's another guest, so at the moment it's set up to say if there's something that would be a good idea, it doesn't reply without asking for permission to reply. It suggests what it would reply and then asks for permission. But I think the interesting thing is...
And potentially researches a guest, and it does more than that.
It has done
right?
that, hasn't
like,
it? It's research guests.
It'll research them on LinkedIn or on the web, then it'll come back and be like, I think this person would be a good fit because X, Y, and Z. Like a bit. It's quite capable in that.
But I think what's different is to explain there is like what would have happened previously is we would chat on WeChat or whatever, and then you say, hang on, and then in the background you'll go away and search on Gemini or whatever, and you'll get something back, and then you'll feed it back.
It's all very
Whereas
manual,
on here, within that chat room, you can just say, okay, we'll do one on that, okay, and then you just task, at Bob. And then you say to him, can you go away and thinking about this episode, what would be the 10 best realistic guests that we could get? We'll go away. We'll say, okay, I can delegate this to this agent. We'll go away. Then we'll come back with suggestions. It's not perfect. I mean, so far when we looked at, was it the critical thinking episode we're going to do, and went away and came up with guests, and it was like, here's a list of the sort of dream guests, and they were, Stanford's number one expert on something around education and IT. Here's your perfect, did you want me to draft an email? Well, obviously that kind of guest is not going to come on the show, so it's not perfect, but that's where you kind of refine it.
Dream big man.
Yeah, and it did hallucinate one, who was it? It was someone who's supposed to be working for fashion and AI, and it had completely hallucinated, and you picked up and you were like, you're hallucinating, Bob, and he came back and said, oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, I've just made that up. So
to be fair, that was down to model selection and some of the config.
Yeah, it was using a crap model.
But I guess that's what I meant before. I mean, I didn't elaborate much, but when I said it requires a bit of technical, it definitely requires quite a lot of technical setup. Now, there's a lot of technical people out there, and 200,000 plus people have.
But it's not something people listening
GitHub.
can just go away tomorrow and just build an OpenClaw.
I don't think so. I think, as I said, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be iterations of this. I mean, if you want to go and have a play with it, by all means. And nowadays, you can.
I think you could, if you have a basic knowledge, you could go away. You could use a decent version of Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini.
Yeah.
Tell it this is what I want to do. Follow all the steps and do it. It would take you a lot of time, and it would. Probably things would go wrong, and you'd have to be very, very clear in that you sandbox it and you don't give it access to anything that you shouldn't.
Can I make a disclaimer there? Because we're going to talk about this later, but the best way to run one of these is not on your own computer, which is what you can do is just run it on your own computer, but it's going to have access to everything on your computer, and it can run things like terminal commands, and to put it bluntly, it could really fuck things up. So don't do that. If you are gonna sandbox it, know what you're doing. I run it on a virtual private server in the cloud, which is a computer you can just effectively it's you rent a computer, so it doesn't have access to all my documents, it doesn't have access to everything on my computer. If you're gonna run it, I think that's probably the best way to do it. So that's my disclaimer.
Yeah, that wasn't a recommendation from me, but I think when we're sort of presuming that people couldn't do it, and I actually think people could do it. It's just it would take a lot of work and effort, and it's probably not at the point. I think that's the thing, is because of the security risks around it, it's just not the point that it's worth you doing that either. The risk benefit is not in favor of, the benefits are not enough for someone who doesn't know what they're doing to overweigh the risk. Now, if you're using it for a kind of business purpose and you can find a way to do that and get someone to help you with it, maybe there is a reason to try and use it. But I'd say otherwise, maybe wait a few months and see where this plays out, because as we'll talk about in a minute, there have been a number of...
Do you think that's a good time to bring in our story, one of our stories about the head of safety and alignment at Facebook?
Why not?
Because, I mean...
We didn't know this was the head of safety and alignment when we read this story, did we? And then found out it's kind of an interesting story anyway. It's even more interesting when you find out
who it
was. So yeah, you go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, so effectively what this is I think this happened in the last few days. So there are massive security risks with something like OpenClaw because if you, and to be fair, it's on you. Like if you give it unfettered access to your computer or your inbox or your bank account, heaven forbid, like for something like that.
I'm sure people have done this, right? People
have lost lots of money already using OpenClaws because it's spent loads of money, whether it's in API tokens or directly through their bank account. But these are the kinds of things that you can do. Like it's got agency in the real world, or in the virtual world at least. So I don't know what came over her, and there's already been some horror stories, but in the last sort of week or so, there's been a news story about the head of safety and alignment at Facebook, who basically said she wanted to clean up her inbox and she'd seen OpenClaw, and obviously that's a really senior position at Facebook, or Meta, and she basically plugged it into her inbox and she gave it a load of instructions, and she said to it, this is one of the problems with it, right? Because it's a large language model, so it's always got a bit of ambiguity in it. It's never going to necessarily follow exactly what you do, what you ask it to do. But she had specifically asked it not to, for example, go ahead and delete things without consulting with her first. But for whatever reason, the prompt she'd created or the model she was using or whatever, or some combination of things, she had asked it to clean up the inbox, but then asked it to check in with her first. And effectively it went and just deleted everything and pretty much deleted her whole inbox because I think, as I understand it, her overriding what she really wanted, which came through in the prompt that she gave it, was that she really wanted to have a really tidy inbox, like get rid of everything she wants to get rid of all the junk mail, all this sort of stuff. She probably emphasized that quite a lot, but then also asked it to check in with her, and somewhere in there it lost the check-in part and it just went mad and started deleting
She'd relied, though, on essentially a sort of verbal or typed command to confirm before you act. And the danger of that is, I think they said this, the process is called compaction, isn't it? Which is where basically as it compacts to save space, as it compacts the knowledge it's got, which is how, a large language model, as a conversation goes on, it remembers everything, but it doesn't remember it as much at the beginning as the bottom, because it's trying to kind of find a way to be more efficient with that. As it compacts, it somehow loses the memory of that instruction, which is a really, really important thing, because she only had one level here. There was no kind of backup, I don't think. So there wasn't kind of several fail safes to get through. It was just relying on this one instruction to not do anything without asking you, and then it went and did it.
Yeah, it was like if
Has she kept her job?
I don't know, actually. It's a bit like if you were talking to a person, right? So if I asked you, go through my inbox and before you do anything, confirm with me if you're going to delete anything. Yeah. But then I went on a ramble for 15 minutes about a load of other stuff and about inbox and how you should clean it up and all that. And
kept going. Make sure you do a really good job of it, and then that's the thing that they go away with, and that bit has been lost. It's exactly how
maybe
it is.
Forget it. And it's a bit how they work. So even without the compaction stuff, a large language model will weight the last thing you said heavier than something that was 100,000 tokens earlier. For obvious reasons, it's more relevant, especially because these things are still fundamentally very, very clever next word prediction, devices, whatever you want to call them. And they're not programmed, they're not. I feel like you need to constrain these AIs with actual programming, actual gateways. So, for example, rather than asking, in this case, rather than just sort of verbally saying, I need to confirm it before you delete anything. Have a physical process in place where it can't delete anything, and all it can do is suggest that you can, and you can do that with OpenClaw.
But you can put it into like its. You can put it into its.
You
I'm
can
not
get-
sure if it's in the sole file, or you put it in several places to make sure that it's always going to have access to that, rather than relying on one command. I would think.
Well, you can. So the way you normally allow these these OpenClaws, the way you set them up to interact with like your inbox, for example, is you give them access to an API key. Now, API keys are very configurable. You can configure one that allows you to archive stuff but not delete it, for example. And so I don't know the specifics, but the sensible way to do what she was trying to do was probably be give it access to move things around and all this, that, and the other, but not actually delete things. And maybe you could have said, right, everything that you think I should delete, everything that you think should be deleted, you can put it in this folder, but don't give it the actual permission to delete stuff. In the same way that that you shouldn't give your literal bank details to one of these AIs and just be like, go off and do whatever I ask you to, and don't spend too much money.
And then get annoyed when it has spent money.
Yeah, exactly. Which is some of the other examples. Like there are examples of people. I think they set up like Claude to bill them automatically for token usage, and then they set an OpenClaw off and hadn't configured it very well, and so it used millions of tokens and cost them thousands of dollars in like 24 hours. But by the time they realised, it was like, and it's like, well, you didn't need to do that. You could say every time you get billed, it gets confirmed. You just have a top-up account with $20 on it, and if it spends it, and it's not a big deal.
I mean, I guess that's the way. If you want to give it access to money, is you create like when you used to be able to go on holiday and create this kind of like is like a debit card, but you just put money into a fund, right? So you create a way that it has access to a limited amount of credit, but it can't access your main account, which that's the reason, like I said, all our accounts will be offline in a few years' time when we get quantum computing. You have to go back into the bank to get your cash out because it's the only way to spend money safely.
Yeah, totally. So that was
Bob Fletcher, our personal OpenAI.
Yeah. Plus,
well, that section of the podcast was Bob Fletcher.
Yeah.
Should we talk about some bad things?
Yeah, well, I've just talked about one of them. I guess.
Well, really
it's
bad
bad
things.
For that particular.
Yeah, that was bad for her.
To be
it
fair,
wasn't bad for everyone
I wouldn't
else.
mind something nuking my inbox and just starting again, but that's a different story.
Well, or should we do some good things? I mean, let's do some good things first, because I don't want to always be the negative one. So there are some big kind of improvements that have come out with, I think in the last week or so, in terms of OpenClaw. So it's now, I mean, one of the weird things I saw is it now has like support for things like 4.6 Opus, and it's integrated Moonshot's Kimi for searching and video understanding. But at the same time, I'd also seen
what they're called? Moonshot?
Moonshot AI is the company that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was our episode with Christy Loke. She talked quite a lot about Moonshot AI and the head of Moonshot AI. He's a famous figure in China. But anyway, they've got support for things like 4.6 Opus, which is Claude's new, Anthropic's new kind of state-of-the-art model. But then at the same time, there is another story that was saying that I think Anthropic have banned OAuth token usage in tools like OpenClaw. So basically, like on the one hand, they have to kind of have. I
think it's.
I guess they know if this is the direction of travel, they need to have some way in, but they're also tightening the screws. The frontier models, want to make sure that they haven't lost all control to open source. So it's kind of working both ways.
Yeah, my reading of this was actually so. Google have done the same thing with anti-gravity. So a lot, basically...
Google did it first, I think, and then Anthropic followed them.
So I think the gist of this is like OpenClaws that aren't configured very well, they absolutely munch through tokens. So I mean...
Bob.
If you're paying...
Bob's a token monster, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he was.
Yeah. I've got him on free models, fortunately, but yeah, they can really rip through API token usage. And the thing is, Google... like on the one hand, like that money's going directly to Google or Anthropic, but on the other hand, if they're getting hammered so much that it's degrading their service to everybody else, it's not necessarily a good thing. So I think they're trying to balance things out. I'll be honest, when OpenClaw first came out, I was like, this is a genius way to make money off AI because people are people are paying via the API keys, which like directly, like they have a profit margin on them. So if you buy, like when you pay for your $20 a month for Claude, if you really smash it, you can probably cost Anthropic money, so to speak. They're not necessarily going to profit off you. They obviously, it probably averages out and they profit off most people. With API keys, like if you spend $1,000 on API keys, they're probably making a couple $100 off it because they're going to have a markup on it. However, there's limits on how many, like the AI models that they can serve. It's not unlimited. They haven't got unlimited compute power. So the impression I got of this was that it was degrading the rest of the service for everybody else.
This is the reason why you've got things like OpenAI using when you had was it GPT-5 first came out, and actually the thing that everyone hated was it would route inquiries to the best model for the task. So you'd find that some things it was routing it to like 4, and people were like, why am I getting a worse response than I was a week ago? And it was actually because it was trying to save, because like you say, they don't have, as we get more and more usage of all of these models, they don't have enough compute. I mean, that was one of the things you talked about why DeepSeek is very unreliable, isn't it, through the API key at the moment, is because in China DeepSeek's been integrated in so many things so quickly that there's just a bottleneck. It just doesn't, there just isn't the capacity. They're not able to have they don't have enough compute for all the use cases, so therefore they're having to kind of choke down a little bit and limit it. So that's probably happening across the board, I would imagine. I think
I think OpenClaw's caused quite a lot of that, which has resulted in this kind of like, it's a bit of a backlash from Google and from Anthropic, where they're saying, hang on, the quality stuff is humans interacting, but like a lot of this token generation has been done by OpenClaw's just
doing nothing
really, like doing these heartbeats, like I say.
You found that, didn't you, that it was going, you were like, why is it using this many tokens? And you were like, oh, it's just going away, and just like, did you find out what it was doing?
Well, so
many tokens.
So the heartbeat stuff that we were talking about earlier, I set it off to use a free model, which literally completely free, which I don't know quite how that works. But I deliberately did that because like you're supposed to set it to be a very cheap model. And then it used like 15 million tokens in 2 days. I looked into it, and actually all of the context, so these OpenClaws, they have loads of config files and all the rest of it. That all gets uploaded every time it has a conversation. It's doing that every 38 minutes, which is like roughly 50 times a day. Actually, I think it was 50,000 tokens of context. Multiply that by 50 times a day, and I had a look at it, and it was like, oh, actually, it is.
It just keeps reading.
It is millions of tokens. It's just basically doing that every half an hour. I've since reduced that, but that's exactly that's the kind of thing that is overloading these APIs, where it's just like it's basically just spamming out, I need to check these emails, and here's all my context about who I am.
And it's separate to the sort of OpenClaw, but this is kind of feeds into that issue, the energy issue, and like how much of the use of AI is being used for, for productivity and for stuff that is good for the world in whatever way you want to put that, whether it's good for business or actually good for humanity, but it's actually being used for good. And how much of it is just burning fuel to basically just
answer Google queries,
or just go on to Reddit and just. I mean, that was the example we gave with Malt, wasn't it?
Which is
all of this is just being used for AIs to just go and talk to each other and people to watch it. It's absolute, like the definition of slop, and this is an example of kind of.
You could say the same about some telly. But,
I mean, I'm not. But what I'm saying is, with this, it's like
YouTube.
No one is even. You could say that the interaction with a large language model with a chatbot is a lot of it is pointless. But actually, there is a person benefiting from that. What I'm saying here is, it's just happening. It's just happening, and no one's actually, like, no human is involved in this. It's just going away and using energy and doing stuff, and then not even producing anything because it's just reading a file over and over again. And that mechanism you were talking about is there to kind of. My understanding is. That's there to save, not energy, but it's there to save the AI from having to try and use up its memory, remembering this massive, because the basic context window, it can't remember all this stuff. So every time it kind of goes in and starts again, reads the file, and then comes away, and that has a way of kind of saving on that context window. But it means that it's just reading. Like you say, if you set that to update every 5 minutes, because the model's basically free. But it's still doing that and using up all those tokens.
Yeah, smashing through tokens, No, I mean, it's definitely not very good from a sustainability point of view.
One other one I was going to say, like a positive thing, I heard that they've integrated.
Was that a positive thing? That last thing.
This is a positive section. It's just
right,
that one unfortunately ended up as not being positive. It was supposed to be because it was having support for sort of
We're trying to be
premium models.
We're trying to be positive.
There was an update at the end of February that has allowed it to have support for Apple Watch. So users can.
It's a positive thing.
Well, it's a positive if you want to use it.
If you've got Apple Watch,
It's a positive for people with Apple Watches. It means they can basically trigger tasks and they can talk to it and give it voice commands from their watch.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you're supposed to be the positive guy. So I mean, you come up with a better one because
that's fine. It's fine.
I struggle to see any.
It's brilliant. I like the fact that the positive is you can use your app.
Well, I've got an Apple Watch.
All the negatives we just gave, and then the positive is you can use your Apple Watch.
Yeah, and it's in WeChat now, which, as you know, WeChat never loses any of its memory and is hosted by the Chinese government. So what could possibly go wrong there?
I'm not connecting Bob.
Yeah, I think this is. I think this is amazing. Like, obviously the authorities have given permission. Like, they'd have to have, because Tencent, are a Chinese company based in China. Like,
maybe.
So you've got to say,
I think
okay,
it might be a workaround.
Yeah, okay, but they would just block it completely. I mean, WeChat is notorious that even though it has kind of access to everything, I mean, you can't scrape any data from WeChat. It's very closed. It's very closed off. So the fact that they are allowing OpenClaw to use it, I think tells you everything.
You need to know.
Everything you need to know, and I'll leave that one there.
I see what you mean. Gathering data.
I shall leave that one there.
Yeah.
All right.
I won't be using it that way.
No. Well,
what else have you got? Oh no, we haven't even talked about the cyber stuff.
No, well, that was going to be a big section on its own, but I was trying to do the positive stuff, wasn't I? So yeah, let's do the bad stuff. I'll start out by saying the thing that I told you about that you didn't know about is it's been labelled as a PAU.
Oh yeah, you did.
Do you remember that?
I can't remember what it stands for. But
a PAU is
some sort of threat.
A potentially unwanted application. That's the status. So it's not something that governments or like there is a world authority that issues PAUs. It's the big kind of cyber security agencies like CrowdStrike, etc. But the two big ones, CrowdStrike's one. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
They have like
a
database online, don't
but basically, they've given it this designation, which is kind of
pretty dodgy.
It's basically that's what it says. It says that it's a vulnerability issue, and basically it's dodgy.
Massive vulnerability issue, yeah.
But that's a big issue because once it's been given that label, we were talking before about the kind of commercial use case and enterprise use and how it could be used for work. Is when that sort of designation has been given to it. Now, if you are any sort of company that has cybersecurity and uses one of these agencies, that's immediately on your ban list, and your firewall is just going to take out any access to it. So you've now got this kind of dichotomy where you've got individuals who want to use this because you can basically they can sit and do nothing all day and get paid for it while OpenClaw does their jobs, and organizations who are shitting themselves and are just like, we need to make sure this cannot get any access to anything we do, and that is going to be something.
Like Facebook, yeah.
But that's going to be something to watch, right? Because it just shows the difference between like the
Facebook safety lady. She's got to be in trouble.
But what I was going to say is it's like the adoption from individuals and kind of agile small organizations and the kind of one person organization, right? That's one thing. And maybe in 10 years time, that's all, those are the successful organizations, because to be able to use AI properly, you can't be a big organization because you're not agile enough. But at the moment, all of the big organizations were like, they're all going to adopt AI and they're all going to do this, is they can't adopt it that fast because of these issues. And if you're a small organization, one person, you're not going to be targeted in the same way as, one of the big four accountants or a bank or whatever. So I think this is just one to watch, not just on OpenClaw and agentic AI, but on everything. Is the security angle and that kind of cybersecurity angle is so different for organizations of any sort of size. And when we talk about those one-person organizations, it's going to apply for them if they become successful. So if you're, an independent person who's just creating some content, or you just run a tiny little business, you make 50, 60 grand a year, okay, probably not going to affect you. But if you become successful, then, it becomes, your Trojan. It becomes the Trojan horse to get into your company essentially, and yeah, steal your money. And
Yeah, I think if you do that and you're sensible, then you probably set one of these up and it does all your stuff for you, and it probably creates lots of security loopholes. And then, once you get going, you get somebody in to review that and sort it all out. I honestly, I think this stuff will go away in a way. Like I think it'll be both. Like the problem with
you think it will go away? I think it'll get worse.
No, I think it'll go away. I think it'll get sorted out. Like people will create proper sandbox versions of these, which are just sandboxed out of the box. The reason OpenClaw's creating so much noise is because you can just do what you want with it. You don't need to. The default, a lot of people have, especially when it first came out, people were just like installing it on their computer and giving it full terminal command and all the rest of it. That's even within the space of a month. OpenClaw itself released the OpenClaw Ansible playbook, which addressed loads of security concerns and all the rest of it. So do I think that there are security concerns with it? Yes, and they're huge, and you'd be mad to, like you say, implement it in your large organization right now. However, all this noise is actually sort of probably getting all these things fixed quite quickly, because there are ways of running these things in a sandbox where they don't have access to be able to wreak havoc effectively.
I probably didn't explain my point. My point wasn't that I think they're not going to improve agentic. My point was that this idea of this kind of open source democratized model that everyone can just build and access, I think that is only going to get the reputational issues and the problems caused by that are only going to get worse. And you're going to end up exactly what you said, which is the same reason why organizations don't just use the best version of ChatGPT or the best version of Claude. They use Copilot, or they use their own enterprise model, which is based on a cheaper but a sandbox version of it. So that was kind of my point. Is this idea that you democratize it is. When the big incident, when the big leak happens, and then it's not just the big businesses, it's everyone in businesses, then they want something, and that allows the big established organizations to come with their agentic model that allows them to have the functionality, but that is within the kind of walled garden. I think that's where I think it ends up. It's not that I think they don't fix the issues in agentic AI. It's just this idea of this one that you can just build yourself, and you buy a MacBook Mini and you just run it from that. I think that doesn't feel like it can go that much further, because there are just flaws there that are, I think are they're unresolvable. I think unless you've got a quantum computer at home to protect it.
So I actually think that
haven't you?
No, but I actually think a huge market in all of this, I'll just give this away. I wish I could build it myself, to be honest. It's already sort of happening. So there are already lots of interfaces for AIs popping up online. So there's examples of interfaces that allow AIs to view web pages, but view them a lot easier, because AIs don't need to see the images and all this kind of stuff, and that just wastes tokens. So there are ways of absorbing that information into an AI in a different way to how a human would absorb it. It's a bit like that social network, right? Like a social network for AIs where they can chat with each other. I think there's going to be more and more infrastructure online that's going to be based around AIs and basically allowing AIs to hook up and talk to different bits of the internet and talk to each other in safe ways. Because that's what these APIs do. Like if you build an OpenClaw yourself and you build it on a virtual private server and you only give it access to the things carefully, it will probably do what you want.
It can't do much wrong, can it? Because it can only access what it's got access to.
Yeah. However, if you hook it up and give it unfettered access to an inbox, it'll go out spamming people, doing all sorts of mad stuff, depending on what instructions you give it. Same thing with a bank account. If you just connect it to a bank account, it'll probably go and spend all your money on something, and it'll be because it misunderstood something that you said or some part of its instructions. However, if it's got a limit on it or an API key for a bank account with $20 in it, a pay-as-you-go something, then that's all it can do, and then you go and fix it and tweak it and whatever. So I do think there's a huge market in agentic AI, and basically the API. So I keep mentioning APIs, like programming interfaces that allow the AI to talk to different apps and different things without the overhead of like, because the way the simple way to do it right now is you just give it access to a browser and it can go and browse the web, and it's got your credit card details and it can go and do what it wants. But it's not a very precise way of doing things, whereas you can actually make it much more precise using APIs. And also the LLMs are getting better all the time. So
although it leaks API keys is one of the things it's been doing, isn't it?
Again, because people don't store their API keys properly, because the way people treat API keys is they copy and paste them into
just
a large
stick
language
it in a word file and save it as API key, and then
and then it can get access to its own API key and do weird stuff with it, like leak it and things like that. So there's been all sorts of bad stories about OpenClaw, but to be honest, there's loads of people who are just quietly back in the back. They're the exciting, cool stories that are funny and make the news. Like, there's also loads of people who are just using it to make money already.
Let me just that PUA status I talked about. So why it happened apparently was it started appearing on enterprise, so company computers, which IT departments didn't know about. And there's apparently two ways that happens. One is the developer downloads a free tool and OpenClaw's piggybacked in. It gets into the organization. The other one is an employee installs it around their kind of restrictions, and then that creates a massive security hole. So that apparently is the reason why they've given it this kind of designation. And then now the kind of main security scanners are marking OpenClaw as a PUA, and then they basically just prevent users from installing a skill that might steal.
Is that what that does then?
So it makes crypto. It said browser cookies crypto. I'm not sure what companies have crypto wallet keys in. Like, it's not most big enterprises, but
no, but browser cookies, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
what was the thing I was going to talk about? There was something I was going to talk about, which was like that. Okay, it was just a bit. It was just a really. Like, it's a bit of a nerdy story, but one of the things. This was a few weeks ago, actually, when shortly after OpenClaw came out. So, if you're a developer, there's something called NPM, which is for managing. It's a package manager for Node, which is it's for creating websites, basically web apps, actually.
Node.js,
yeah, exactly.
I know what that is.
You know what it is now.
I've been vibe coding.
He's been vibe
so
coding.
I'm going to be the technical one soon, and you're going to be the religious one.
Don't think so. Not unless it's what's it called? What's the religion that the
Christofarianism?
Christofarianism.
Oh, we haven't said that, or maybe we said that in a previous episode.
I think we mentioned the religion that they came up with.
OpenClaws had developed their own religion called Christofarianism.
Yeah.
Crust as in crustacean, as in claws, as in lobsters, crabs, crayfish, etc.
Yeah. Yes. So this npm command basically OpenClaws have something called skills, and skills are basically just they're effectively just files that people write that allow.
It's an MD file, right?
They're MD files, yeah, Markdown files. So they're Markdown files that imbue you install them. They're a bit more complicated than that, but they imbue your instance of OpenClaw with the skill. So, like, it could be a skill to use a browser, it could be a skill to buy pizza, whatever, APIs, whatever. And because people create these
skill
skills
to buy a pizza.
Well,
I know it does. It's just quite funny.
Yeah, I keep using this pizza example. It's a great example. But because people were writing these skills using AI, of course, they were like developing these skills that they put on this. I think it's Malt Hub, where you have the skills.
Have you got the skills, Jimmy?
Bob's got skills.
Bob's got skills, and he's got a soul.
Skills. I'm struggling. So people were writing these skills using AI, of course, and AIs hallucinate. So one of the AIs hallucinated this npm command. So it was a command that you would normally, as a developer, you would run it, and it would install something on your computer or take some action. And this command got hallucinated, and then because other people were writing skills based on other skills, apparently this hallucination, which was just a made-up skill, a made-up command that didn't do anything, but because other people were writing skills based on that, I think it was like 200 other skills ended up referencing it. So basically it ended up, this fake command ended up like, it was kind of this like massive meme. It spread throughout these other skills as a made-up command that just didn't exist, and a developer spotted it and then went and created the command on npm. So they pushed it to npm on GitHub, which is an open source project. It got accepted, and I don't know what it actually got it to do, but then of course you've got all these like these open claws that are picking up these skills that run this command, and I don't know, let's just say it goes and sends some Bitcoin to his wallet or something like that. So like, it was this mad thing that, like, I don't think it's definitely never ever been seen before. It's almost like a malware or a virus, but the person created it because it got hallucinated by an AI in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, there's something like it's just like there's no reference point, right? Because it's never happened before.
No. An AI hallucinated something that was made up, but then it spawned into existence as a bit of malware off the back of the AI hallucinating it in the first place. Yeah.
I thought this was quite funny. There was a summary timetable that when I researched this earlier, I got a summary timetable of recent developments, and just the last two are quite funny. So February the 14th, OpenAI acquisition foundation of the OpenClaw Foundation. February the 17th, the npm supply chain attack, where it unauthorized shadow AI installs. 21st, they brought out the new release, which had the Apple Watch support and sub-agent nesting feature. And then this is the bit that I like. February the 24th, in the morning, they hardened security and added Claude 4.6 support. And then in the afternoon, Google and Anthropic banned it. Major providers block OpenClaw's proxy usage. So 24th was an interesting day for OpenClaw.
OpenAI competitors, aren't they, though, as well?
Yeah, of course.
Two of the biggest ones.
Yeah. I mean, well, Gemini, Meta and Anthropic, I think, all banned it. So, yeah.
Apparently, it was MPX React Code Shift.
Oh, yeah, I have heard this story. Yeah, I've heard this story.
Yeah.
Just to finish off, because I think there's a really interesting point you've just made, is these two files, the soul file, so the soul MD file and the skill MD file. I think understanding those two actually helps you to understand what this is. So the soul file basically gives it essentially its personality, right? Yeah. And then the skills file gives it its
raison d'etre, the soul file.
Yeah, the raison d'etre is the soul file, and then the skills file gives it its actual practical usage and its ability. So you're giving it a personality and you're giving it the ability to do things. That's a really, maybe we should have said this at the beginning, because it feels like that's a really good way to explain basically how you create its persona, its identity.
Exactly. The whole rest, all of it,
Cool.
Nice.
Well, I hope everyone's enjoyed seeing mine and Jimmy's faces. Next week, we will try and have a nice fancy background for you so that we sex things up a little bit. If we could make things sexier, if we could make things any sexier than they already are.
There won't be only sexing things up.
This is the sexiest AI podcast the sexiest AI podcast involving two 40-year-old men from the UK in China.
Speak for yourself, I'm 45. But yes, it is
I'm 40.
It's the what did you say? It's the sexiest
podcast in China. AI podcast run by two British people based in China.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said.
And on that note,
see ya.
Down in the bayou where the coal runs slow, big pot bubbling on a low flame glow, crayfish clicking like a keyboard jam, seasoned with secrets in a startup plan, OpenClaw stirring with a silicone spoon, talking about freedom under a delta moon. But the water's getting hotter every day. You can taste that change in the rules they lay. They said it's over, let the whole world see. Pat Said open AI's got a bigger flame. Better spice racks, better brand name. But when you trade that swamp for a glass walled hall, sometimes your open hand becomes a claw. Equity simmering, shares on ice. Freedom tastes different at a higher price. When the Bayou Band signs corporate law, you can hear that hen in the closing claw. Stir that gumbo, let the red tails boil. Truth rise up through the pepper and oil. Jimmy didn't understand, didn't get the law. Before he did videos, folks knew he wasn't other people at all. Now the pots got thicker, you can feel the draw. From OpenClaw, turning in the closed claw. Spoons clatter like a term sheet fight. Bayou moon in fluorescent light. Is it still open if the gate's got a key? Is it still free if you got to agree? Crayfish scatter when the heat gets raw. Hard to stay open with a tightening claw. Road get darker, contracts get longer, Bayou get smaller, shareholders stronger. Stir that gumbo, let the red tails boil. Truth rise up through the pepper and oil. Jimmy didn't understand, didn't get the law. Before he did videos, folks knew he wasn't other people at all. Now the pots got thicker, you can feel the draw. From OpenClaw, turning into closed claw. Yeah, the pots got bigger, you can feel the draw. From OpenClaw, turning into closed claw. Down in the bayou where the free winds blow, some claws open, some claws close.